On today's Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings, there's a 6'8" freshman forward going to Arizona that deserves to be in the top 20 of preseason rankings. And no, it's not Koa Pete. We'll tell you more on this episode of Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings.
You are Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings, your daily podcast on the future stars of the NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, Hoop Sickos, to another episode of Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. My name is Tyler Rucker. I'll be co-hosting this one with my mad scientist, Mr. Tyler Metcalf. Metcalf, how are we doing today?
I'm fantastic. Also coasting through this episode. No, we're never coasting. We're always putting the work in.
We're having fun. It's the off season, but basketball season is looming right around the corner, Metcalf. We're getting excited. We've got NBA preseason starting less than 2 weeks. We've got training camp around the corner, and college basketball is almost less than 40 days away. So, we've been doing these episodes, these prospect breakdowns to kind of get everybody caught up and educated a little bit about like, hey, here's some names to keep an eye on. But we've got a couple of names. We just did another episode about one that should be dropping soon, and then this one is one that's not getting a lot of national attention. But me and you are personally pretty high on. We haven't shared our notes for this episode. I wanted to talk to you about him and see what we're thinking, what we're liking, but wanted to talk to you about Dwayne Aristode, who's going to Arizona, freshman forward. Spent some time overseas. Koa Pete's the big name that I think is getting a lot of attention in Arizona. But I think we've watched Dwayne at separate times, separate viewings, and we're both very intrigued about him. So what's the skill you think that is going to really get people buying in on why Dwayne needs to get a little bit more hype heading into this college basketball season?
Yeah, I'm head over heels about this dude. He's my favorite Arizona prospect, and by a pretty comfortable margin at this point. Obviously, a lot of basketball left to be played, but when I look at this Arizona team, I'm like, I'm tuning in for Dwayne Aristode. And I mean, for starters, 6'8", 220 is a pretty good sales pitch right off the bat. And then you add in the freak athleticism, but his elite skill, in my eyes, the thing that we're top of the bullet list of strengths and A+ on the report card is his defense. I love the way this dude defends. At 6'8", 220, he plays with physicality, he plays with speed, he plays with anticipation, both on and off ball. There's some fun weak side rim protection stuff, but mainly on ball, being able to sit down in his defensive stance, slide his feet, defend with his chest, cut off drive, stay disciplined, not get in foul trouble. I get like giddy over watching him defend.
All right. In the words of Matthew McConaughey, sometimes we got to go back to go forward. So I'll give everyone a quick little breakdown of the background for Dwayne Aristode. As Metcalf mentioned, 6'8", 220 per Arizona's team website. He played 3 years with Spain, with Juventud Badalona. Sorry for the pronunciation. Played also for the Netherlands in the 22 FIBA U16 European Championship. He averaged 15, 9, 3, 2, and 1.3 blocks over 7 games. Played for the Netherlands senior national team in summer of 2024. He was 17 at the time. And then the last 2 years in high school, he's been at the Brewster Academy, but his senior year, he had an injury, missed the season. So that's probably why he wasn't getting enough, buzz, because he was injured. But still, I think he was a top 40 prospect in the high school rankings. But yeah, you pointed out, Metcalf. Immediately on tape, he pops because of the frame, the size. He looks almost NBA ready when it comes to just his physical profile. And then you start to see a lot of tools on both sides of the ball. Defensively, there's a lot of it's a bit of a mean streak. It almost seems like he plays where he can flip that switch and really be a powerful presence on the perimeter. Besides the defense, like what else gets you excited when it comes to his game right away? Like what stood off to you? Obviously, we can talk a little bit later of like, let's break down everything we like. But what was the second thing after the defense for you?
Just that two-way impact,
Yeah.
where low maintenance, doing the little things, doing the dirty work. That stars don't typically want to do, but everyone else around them has to do. Now, I don't think Aristode is going to grow into an all NBA caliber wing. Maybe he does. Never say never. No ceilings, all that good stuff. But I think there's a really, really safe baseline for him as maybe the best 3&D wing in this class. I think there are a lot of questions around, obviously, especially with this freshman class outside of the top 4 guys. And when we look at guys like Koa Pete, Caleb Wilson, Nicholas Hemenia, like whoever you want to throw out there are a lot of big question marks. There's some really fun stuff and some really positive strengths with in bold letters, but then there's some really glaring issues with some really important parts of their game. And I don't really get that vibe with Aristode, where he may not have the ultimate upside as some of these other guys, but I think the baseline and the foundation of who he is as a two-way wing right now is shockingly encouraging for a guy who is like 38th or so on ESPN's top 100 and isn't really getting mentioned at all. And here I am in the preseason and I have him as a top 10 guy.
I don't think you're that crazy. I usually don't say that often for everyone listening that's friends of the pod, on our other feeds, we always are never afraid to tell each other when we're crazy. But this is one of those prospects. The more I've watched, the more I've been like, what am I missing here? There's seriously a lot of intrigue, and he checks a lot of boxes pretty quickly when it comes to the game overall. Just the two-way potential is really something special. He's going to be teammates with Koa Pete. A lot of people mention him as probably a top 10 prospect, but every time I've watched Aristode, I've come away of like, well, why isn't this one getting a little bit more attention? We're kind of getting, they're almost similar when it comes to like the size, the frame, the age. But I think Dwayne's offensive game at least makes me feel a little bit more comfortable early on. Would you say the same?
Yeah. And while we're on the top, like cream of the crop, A+ skill set, what is it the defense for you? Is it the physical tools? Well, what's his elite elevator pitch calling card skill in your eyes?
I actually, let's just get weird. I actually came away a little bit more impressed. Shout out Ryan Russillo, with the offensive side of the ball. I felt the shot really looks consistent, smooth. He does a great job of not bringing the ball low. Like I think he can catches low passes, keeps it right up, doesn't let, as shooters, they drop it sometimes when they're the younger players. Consistent, smooth. I think he's got a little bit of a mid-range like game where it's like, it's not wasted dribbles, which I think is really important to be a scorer. It's like he can get a post entry face up and 1-2, he knows where to get to his spot. So it's simple without wasting effort. And, I think he's just a problem. And then all of a sudden you can give him a runway to get downhill and he explodes with power to throw down some nasty, like, whoa, there's some anger behind that slam. So I think the offense was something I was more intrigued by the more I kept watching. And then you get the defensive kicker where you're like, oh my goodness, there's definitely a two-way talent here to be something really fun.
So why isn't he getting more love?
I don't know.
I don't understand.
Is it just because of the lack of like he didn't have that senior year, so everyone didn't get to see and talk about him as much? I don't know. Well, let's. This is a good one. Let's take a break, and we're gonna really break down the positives and what we like about his game.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Okay, Mr. Metcalf, mad scientist. Before we get, all out of whack and all over the place because we're too excited about Dwayne Aristode, freshman forward going to Arizona, what else? Let's break down the game. What else are the positives you took away that you really stand out to you? Like, what do you think is like, hey, I'm loving this. What is everybody else missing?
Yes, and my elite skill form, I think he could be the best wing defender in this class. I think Arizona's going to pick up right where they left off after losing Carter Bryant and KJ Lewis in terms of that wing defensive perimeter versatility because of Aristode alone. But I think the offense is really, really intriguing. I like you said about the shot, I buy it, and I think that baseline catch and shoot spot up guy. Um, I think the foundation for that is really high. Now we just did an episode on London Jemison. I don't think he's that same level of shooter by any means. I think Jemison's way more comfortable off movement and off platform. I think Aristode's shot gets a little ugly and a little inconsistent when he is forced off platform, or when he's not squared up, on balance, spotting up. That will have to improve. But when he's the standstill stuff is really encouraging right now, and I think is in a great spot where he is in his developmental curve at this point, as mid to late September. But then there's so much skill and strength and IQ and passing upside with him too that really gets me excited about him as a potential tertiary creator, where once he does start attracting those long closeouts or runs a second side pick and roll or is put in movement off screens and DHOs and stuff, where he can get into the middle of the lane and kick out or find cutters. There are some awesome clips of him just delivering some no look dimes in traffic from the middle of the floor, using that scoring gravity to create for others. Am I overblowing that level of, or that impact that he showed on offense?
No, I'm not just saying this because we're, doing a podcast together. It's one of those weird ones where we talk about all the time. We can only watch so much high school film before you're like, all right, let's go. Let's get the season here. But this is the time of the year that's really important, because we're trying to you're trying to get a vibe for everyone, but you're also trying to be like, hey, how's this going to work with their new situation, with the team they're going to? We see plenty of times where the hyped names coming into a draft cycle, they don't work out as a one and done, or they don't live up to the expectations. Jaden McDaniels was a top 5 projected pick when he was going to Washington in preseason ranks, ends up going late first round. We see it all the time. And then you get the other version of that where it's some guys that really make some noise, some returners that come out of nowhere. Bub Carrington wasn't even discussed as a player that could be a one and done. He ends up going top 20. I think this class, you kind of hinted at it early on. I think this is a class where after we get past the top 4, if you want to put it that way, everything's on the table, where it's like, hey, we could get some guys that fail to live up to the hype. We could get some guys that just might be, they need more than 1 year. Or we might get some guys that surprise and kind of rise up the ranks. I think Dwayne's one of those where everything you see offensively, like I think transition, he's not just an impactful player, but he's really smart to also create for others. You mentioned the playmaking, like he's a bad man. He's a grown man on the court. He's got a great physical profile. I agree. I think as a spot up weapon, great. The mechanics are fluid. Like I said, there's no extras when it comes to his mechanics, but he's going to have to work on, if he gets run off or if he's shooting on movement. But I think there's just a really good foundation. So I don't think you're crazy. I think there's so many good parts of his game that you can get excited about.
I really get worried about what he could look like with Arizona, just because Coach Lloyd has an inconsistent track record of allowing freshmen to really shine. And I hope that Aristode's size, athleticism, low maintenance offense is instead empowered, instead of being like, oh, well, you don't need the ball. We don't have to force it to you. It's like, well, just because he doesn't have to have the ball to make an impact doesn't mean he shouldn't get the ball still, because in transition, off handoffs, broken plays, there's so much fun. Tertiary, secondary offensive creation that he could offer, especially playing off of a guy like Jaden Bradley, who's really good getting downhill, can collapse the defense, kick out to him, and now Aristode's spotting up in the corner and letting it fly, or now is attacking a closeout and dumping it off to Koa Pete, who's cutting down the middle of the lane for a huge poster dunk. I think there's some really fun ways that it could go, but I do get a little hesitant about, is he really going to be consistently empowered to unlock everything that we saw from him the last couple years in high school?
That's the $1 million question. Is I think a lot of evaluators and scouts have a bad taste in their mouth from Carter Bryant's experience last year, where it was like, hey, Arizona had a veteran-filled team, and then they had this unbelievably talented, athletic, defensive prospect in Carter Bryant that took big strides as a shooter, but it was like, why can't you get him on the floor more? Now you look at this Arizona roster coming into this year, I think it's a completely different type. It's like, okay, you have the bigs with Toby Waka and Matthias Krias. Sorry for my first name pronunciation. It's the off season. Those are your front court upperclassmen. Then you get Jaden Bradley, Anthony Del Orso, who should be, space on floor. The rest of the roster is going to be young. So someone's going to have to step in and play.
Yeah.
And if you could get Pete and Aristode to kind of hit the ground running, that's a really fun combo on the perimeter with Bradley, like you're saying, with Del Orso. Then you get Braden Burries. It could be a fun Arizona team, but I think Tommy Lloyd's going to have to be at a point where it's like, you got to play these young kids. There's too much talent with Aristode and Koa Pete. But when we're talking just about Dwayne, I know you're head over heels right now. You're off season in love. I get it. I'm right there with you. What else? Like, what is something you want to see the most? What would early on in the season you kind of see from his game, and you're like, I knew it. I'm all in. I'm staying there. Like, is there one part of his game the most? Not talking just improvement areas, but is there one part of his game that if he's translating early on in the season, you're going to be like, this is a legit one. I feel fantastic about it.
Yeah, and I'm a mark for good defenders.
Yeah.
So like if he comes out playing that same defense right away, I'm like, yep.
Okay. Here we go.
Sign me up. But I kind of expect that to be the case. But if the off-ball shooting just looks even a little better, whether the volume is there, he doesn't have to be a 45% 3-point shooter, but if he's in that 37, the high 30s, on decent volume, and there's a little bit of movement stuff, a little bit more pull-up stuff, a little bit more off-platform stuff, that even if it's not going in, like, are the misses consistent? Like, is he just not hitting the side of the backboard or completely airballing it when he's not totally in his comfort zone? And I think if we see that, plus the defense, plus the physical tools, then it's like, how is this not a lottery guy? How is this not someone that teams are going to be fawning all over in the mid lottery to immediately insert into their team to then continue to develop and unlock the rest of the skills? Because there's a lot there to be really excited about. And if he just immediately shows a little bit more versatility in his outside shooting, specifically off ball, on ball would be awesome too, but specifically off ball, then it's like, this is a legit 3&D guy at 6'8", 220, with a lot of room to grow into so much more.
I love how you put that. Okay, let's take our final break, and then we're going to play devil's advocate and say, hey, not everything's all sunshine and rainbows. We got to talk about some of the weaknesses or stuff that needs to improve on. So let's take our final break.
When I found out Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. Let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear fit, comfort, or just finding the right style for me. Skims changed all that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. I tried the Skims Stretch 5-inch boxer briefs, and I'm hooked. These are perfect for my active lifestyle. They move with me, never lose their shape, and stay in place all day. Whether I'm working out or just running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear I've ever owned. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing, almost like you're wearing nothing at all. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show from the drop-down menu that follows.
All right, we're back. Metcalf, too many times we get feedback from fans, listeners, basketball draft sickos that say, you guys are so positive. Why can't we be more negative? And it's like, well, life's too short to be negative all the time. But with scouting, with evaluating, it is important to say, hey, here's some areas we're eyeing for improvement. We're hoping that can kind of get ironed out. We're never saying that they're bad at this. We're trying to say, hey, they just need some improvement stuff to watch. So when you watch Dwayne Aristode, who, if you're just listening, incredible time to drop in. Freshman going to Arizona, 6'8", 220, really talented. Going to be a name that we're believing should get a little bit more national buzz heading into the year, or actually hopefully after like the first month, and me and Metcalf can say, hey, we look great for once. What is something you're eyeing with his game that you're like, I want to see some improvement?
Yeah, it's time to start drinking the haterade. And this guy's a fraud. I can't even get into the top 25 in high school recruiting. What are we doing here? No, so the concerns come with how real is the shot. There's no in-between game in his 17 games with Expressions Elite and AAU because he didn't have that full senior season at Brewster. So have to go back even further. Well, there's another one. Hey, he's injury prone. What are we doing here? Bum can't stay healthy. I'm kidding. But took 13 mid-range jumpers in those 17 games with Expressions Elite, ranked in just the 7th percentile in shooting off the bounce. Only 23 attempts, so low volume, low efficiency, low sample size, if you want to play devil's advocate. To me, playing devil's advocate, there's a mind bender. And then isolation, just ranked in the 24th percentile in scoring too. So the on-ball reps were really low volume, really low efficiency. And is that a case of just not getting the opportunity, or not getting the opportunity because of an inability? And that would be my biggest question mark with him going forward is, how dynamic is the handle? How versatile is the shooting when you're not in your comfort zone? And so far, it hasn't been great. There have been some really fun flashes of mid-range turnarounds, or straight line drives, getting to the rim, attacking closeouts, creating for others. But those are just flashes. Whereas the defense, the spot-up shooting, we have a much more substantial sample size of sustained success. Whereas the on-ball stuff that's really going to catapult him from being a potentially really awesome role player into being a key piece down the line is, what can you do on ball? And so far it's been minimal.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment with a lot of these young freshmen forwards, wings. We're always trying to be, is like, hey, okay, if you're a shooter, or we can tell that you can really space the floor, if you're also pairing that with athleticism, we're probably knowing at the high school ranks, you're going to be able to either get by people and throw down with power, or you're going to be able to shoot it whenever you get a little bit of a window. A common thing we're saying is like, okay, now what about the in-between game? Is it going to be too fast? Can you showcase that you can create your own? Can you, set up a pick and roll and make the right reads out of that when the defense is collapsing? Those are the big questions, I think, for myself personally, is like, okay, now what does everything look like when the ball sits potentially and he is, running a 2-man game, and what can he make? But the playmaking looks fun. There's a lot of stuff where I'm like, this looks like it could really fall into place quickly. And what we said early on, he ended up being a top 40 recruit. I think he was, before his injury as a junior, he was the 21st prospect in the country, gets hurt. He had a foot injury, ends up around 38, as I believe Metcalf pointed out earlier. So it's like, well, the buzz cooled a little bit, but he's still going to Arizona. He's still got a potential to play a lot of minutes with Koa Pete, which could be a very fun duo together with their skill sets. Mm-hmm. And then you add the vets and kind of the pieces they have around them. I absolutely think this could be a name that you're spot on, and this could be one that jumps pretty quick, because this isn't a 6'5", 200 shooting guard we're talking about. This is a 6'8", 220 bully that really looks like it could be something special.
All right, so let's say I'm just out over my skis. I have him top 10 right now.
Over my skis is a new one. Go ahead.
You've never heard that?
No. Wow.
No. Well, you live in a desert, so you don't get precipitation. So let's say that my excitement is completely unfounded and it doesn't work this year. Not saying he's a total disaster or whatever, but it's like, this guy needs time. What would have gone wrong for that to be the case?
Probably the shot. The offensive game is just, it's probably a similar path to Carter Bryant, where we're looking and being like, the offensive game just wasn't there. And it's more of like, maybe the offensive game isn't there and it comes to trying to create, or the in between. And it's like, hey, maybe the shot from deep is low 30s on lower volume. But I go back to the defensive game that we've talked about a lot. Like, his defensive ability that's something that's always going to get a coach's trust, if you could really be a problem that way, in a good way.
Well, we said that last year with Carter, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, but they also had. Don't talk to me about last year. I asked so many scouts throughout the year. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, Tommy's got to play the kid. So this roster, though, just looks so different. Of like, they're gonna have to find young guys to step up. We mentioned the pieces they have. Like, they have some pieces in place that you can argue, like, okay, like, they're going to lean on the vets, the upperclassmen who have been with the program for a couple of years. The forward position, they really need some young guys to step up, and they're going to have depth. Like, I think they're playing Florida to start the year, who many are thinking is going to repeat. So you better be ready to go. And Tommy's going to have to figure out that rotation. But I know one thing: if I had 2'6'8" freak of nature, strong freshmen that could really do some damage, I would want them to be playing on the court at the same time.
Yeah, I hope we get a lot of Bradley, Burries, Aristode, Pete, Krivas lineups early in the season, so those three young guys can figure out how to play together, because I think that's going to be their best five.
I do too. And if you get that lineup healthy
so
and
much
playing together,
athleticism.
that's a problem of a lineup.
Yeah.
And Koa Pete at 6'8" is that's a bully too.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, they need Krivas to be healthy, but like, that's why I think you're onto something with Aristode of like, hey, this is one to get excited about, really, because really intriguing situation, potential great fit with that lineup, and his skill set that we're getting so excited about could really be blossomed with everyone alongside him. Like, it could really be on full display.
Yeah, I just hope he gets the opportunity, because I think there's so much there on both ends of the floor where he's just kind of like this skeleton key type of player where he's just going to be able to unlock so much for that Arizona team. At least I hope so.
Is that the only thing holding you really like all back, or are you just like, no, I'm all in? We don't care if we're wrong in the beginning. We're like, hey, we like this guy. We always say with evaluating, like, go with your gut.
Yeah, and there's a lot of basketball left to be played, and the sample size will grow and change. But based on what I've seen so far, it's really tough for me not to see him as one of the most intriguing incoming freshmen outside of those top four guys, because I have so many question marks. Like I said at the top of the show, I have so many question marks with this freshman class. And while Aristode isn't a perfect player and has to get better in a lot of areas, I think the baseline of where he is right now, with the athletic tools, the off-ball scoring, the playmaking flashes, and the defense, is enough for me to be like, yeah, I think he's one of the top 5-6 freshmen in this class right now.
Look, everyone has their own method or madness when it comes to evaluating high school film and getting ready for an upcoming draft cycle, and like what scouts do, what evaluators do. I think you get to a point where, me personally, I try to figure out who pops right away, like who grabs my attention immediately. A couple of years ago, one of the first ones that just really knocked me out of my chair was Stephon Castle. This year, Aristode was one of those that right away I was like, all right, I'm in. Like, you're going to get me watching an hour now of film. So I'm not going to say he's going to be a top 3 pick, but I'm saying this one just seems like it needs a little bit more steam going into this college basketball season. It's like, hey, this deserves some respect. This could be a real one. And I think you're onto something, Metcalf. I like that. Any last thoughts?
No, and just when we talk about or think about these guys, and it's that time of the year where we should be getting excited about them, and thinking about high-end outcomes. It's guys like Trey Murphy, OG Anunoby, those physical, versatile two-way wings that may not get all the accolades, may not get all the shine, may not get all the usage, but just rock and play winning basketball and are a force when they're out there. Like if when I think about like real high end outcomes with him, I see a lot of OG Anunoby.
That's a really good one that you brought that up. You hadn't shared that with me before, but like that's when you said that name, I was like, oh, that's the path. Because what I was thinking is how many 6'8", 220 plus guys that play good defense stick in the NBA? Like you're at least going to have so many teams offering like, hey, yes, we will take our time with you because you have such a unique skill set that is so desired. It has become a wings league. If you have talented forwards that can play two-way, you're going to be very, very dangerous. I think that's why Dwayne's like, hey, he's got a really good foundation to start with. And if he can be efficient this year, I like the call from you of like, hey, if that 3-point shot's just flirting with low 40s on respectable volume at 6'8", 220, and he's playing good defense, like that's teams are gonna be lining up. So yeah, that's all I got. But this has been a fun one, Metcalf. Thanks to all you draft sickos, basketball fans. The countdown's on, folks. We see light at the end of the tunnel. So for myself, Tyler Rucker, and my co-host Tyler Metcalf, the mad scientist, thanks for listening to Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings and making us your first listen every day. Have a good one.